there's a test called the thumb test, right? And the idea is that you can put your thumb over something which is a well-known brand and still know it belongs to that group. If I covered the Beak can, anyone who drinks, craft beer knows that's Beak.
Great shout.
You don't need to read the word Beak. That's a sign of a well thought out brand.
Craft beer is more than just brewers and breweries. It's a whole community. From designers to hop growers, beer writers to bar owners, these are the people shaping the scene, even if they don't brew a single drop. Welcome to People in Beer, where we dive into the stories of those in the wider craft beer community. Hello and welcome to a Planet Beer TV podcast session. Something a bit fun and different for us, Paul.
Sort of. We're branching out, Chris. We're branching out. So, when we first started Planet Beer TV a while back, we did this feature called Beer and Branding. You remember that?
Yeah, it was my passion project, that one.
It didn't last very long though, did it?
I mean, it did. We have just only done about 4 episodes of it.
I wasn't great
over the 3 years. It was just finding the right ones to talk to.
So, we used to do a thing where we'd speak to breweries about their branding and their can art and their marketing and all that good stuff and get their opinions on how important that stuff is. But as we've not done it in a while...
Yeah, I think the last one that we did was Daya.
Yeah, we did Daya, didn't we? So we've found an interesting little segue into that world again.
Yeah.
So, who are we talking to today?
So, I've managed to find us a guy...
Oh, you have?
...that weaves some absolute brand magic.
Weaves
some absolute...
He's a designer. He's a marketer. He's a strategist. He's a public speaker. He's a weaver of dreams.
A weaver of dreams.
Who have we got, Chris?
We've got Mr. Tim, the brand weaver. So let's give him a round of applause.
How are you doing, Tim?
Hello, gentlemen. I'm doing very well, and thank you for the copious name drops. It's like they say the name of the film in the film. It's great fun.
They've said the thing. Yeah. Thanks for jumping on, mate. We kind of stumbled on you on social media. You've been getting around a little bit in beer circles. I think that's safe to say, and you've been pushing your wares across breweries, and you definitely become quite prominent on social media. I've seen you pop up on quite a few things, and you're doing your own stuff as well. So we'll get into that in a bit.
It's always nice to actually find someone that is equally as passionate about like beer and branding as I am, because that was one of the things which I always thought was an unsung kind of thing that's kind of unique to craft beer. And when I sold Paul the idea of finding some of our favourite breweries and talking to them about the branding, he was like, "That's genius." And thankfully,
I think I used those words.
I think he did.
I think that sounds right. Let's give it a go.
But I think what I did find from it, like Paul was half right in the sense of we haven't done lots more of it because we did find that it doesn't get the clicks as much as we were anticipating. So we never shelved it. We just didn't really. We always made sure that we were only pursuing and doing the ones which, were worth the time and
like anything. No, these things need focus, don't they? And probably people who know what they're talking about more than us. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your journey into craft beer.
Yes. So as I mentioned, always been a big fan of beer and craft beer and seeking out new and exciting breweries. And my father-in-law had moved to a new location in Buckinghamshire, and he's like, "Oh, we've got a brewery here. Do you want to go and check it out?" Yes, of course, being the answer. We did it. Yeah, holed up in their tap room, drunk far too many of their delicious beers, and ultimately end up abusing the current branding on the clips at the bar. Just be like, it's not great, is it? Like, who's done this? Terrible. And lo and behold, I was informing co-ownership of the brewery at the time that their clips were terrible. He was very understanding, considering it was him and his brother who had bought the brewery just before COVID, and it had always been on their list that they were going to rebrand.
Okay.
So it was somewhat fortuitous that I was there just giving it the big, oh, they're terrible. And his response was like, yeah, we're going to rebrand. Do you happen to know anyone who can do it? And I went, well, turns out I do. And I dropped him my golden doubloon, which I use as my business card, which you can see.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
And the rest is history, really. It started just with one can design for a pale that they were releasing and trialing. That turned into 3 cans designs, and then it turned into a full strategy and a full rebrand rollout. And then last year, that won Brewery Rebrand of the Year at the Brewers Journal Brewers Congress Awards. So not
nice,
too shabby.
man.
Who was that then?
That's Vale Brewery. They're based in Brill.
So we've got some of your stuff that you sent us beforehand anyway. So Vale's part of that. So we'll flash that up. So is there anything else that you do? Are you just purely focused on the brand design?
No, it's a lot more than just the design side of things. I think that's one big confusion that I get a lot when I say, "Oh, I'm a brand designer, or a brand strategist, or whatever it is." They go, "Oh, you can design our logo, or you can design me a can." And of course, until the cows come home, don't worry about it. But the idea of a brand is much, much bigger than a visual element. It is that story. It's that narrative. It's the things that people say about you when you're not in the room. And I help breweries to establish what that is, how to communicate it, and then how to make everyone aware of that. And it's so important. The more people I talk to in the trade, or buyers, or even consumers looking for new stuff, the quality of liquid is important. But even before it's touched your lips, you want to know about the brewery. You want to know about the beer. You want to know the story, what makes it different, and why should I care? And I think that it's a huge aspect of what I do. The design element then comes afterwards, because it is inspired by everything that we've learned and created beforehand. I get it with so many breweries, they want to go, we want to rebrand, or we want to redesign because we need something new and fresh, or we've got bored with it. But the worry is you haven't done the foundation. You don't really know what you're trying to say to people. You don't know who you're trying to say it to. You just go, I think it should be red now. Well, let's put some skulls on it. Skulls are good, aren't they? Everyone loves skulls. And it's like, yeah, but you completely miss the mark if you're trying to build something which is a true brand.
Yeah, and I think the same can be said as well. I mean, you're trying to develop probably an audience for your beer or product or whatever it is, but really what you're trying to do is keep that audience engaged as well, because a lot of people don't just come and go, oh, I like this brewery, for example, because the beer is good, but I really like the artwork. What they engage with is, whatever they're presenting on social media, the way they present themselves as people, the stuff they do tangentially that sits along their brewing. For example, when they do their events or their festivals and things like that, and their tap takeovers, and how they just present themselves from the ground up, really. And that's what I think a lot of people fall in love with breweries. Is of course the beer is great, but also they just enjoy being part of the people who know this brewery, for example, is doing wonderful stuff in different circles, not just in their brewing. So I guess the whole strategy side of things, just it's really central to their narrative as a company, right?
In my opinion, it's huge, but of course I would say that because that's the work that I do. But if you look at how generations are evolving and how people are approaching beer, or even just socializing and going out, the idea of beer or running a brewery cannot exist on beer alone anymore. It needs to become more experiential. Like, as you say, what are the events that you're doing in the tap room? What messages are you putting out on social media? And again, you can't just do the normal on social media, this is the beer we've got coming up, here's the next event where we've got a pizza band rocking up. You can't have the same events where you've got a singer-songwriter singing about how they split up with their partner for 45 minutes, okay? That's done and dusted. What you need is something which is truly unique, that genuinely reflects the things that you care about and what you're trying to kind of like put out in the world, really, through your beer and through everything else that you're doing.
I think what most people associate with beer design, or brewery design, should I say, is obviously the can artwork, because it's fundamental now to selling your product on a shelf or in a fridge, hopefully, from your bottle shop, alongside other cans which look glorious, or colourful, or these amazing identities of their own. So, I mean, probably asking the wrong person here, but to you, how important is the can artwork for beer?
Can artwork, it is key. Like you say, it is one of the most important touch points, and what you see on the can is going to be on the clip. It might evolve onto a bottle at times as well. So it's really important. But my biggest bugbear is where it's not consistent. So you've got a brewery who starts off down one track and they're like, yeah, this is our vibe. This is what we're doing. 6 months later, the in-house team have got bored with it. They've gone, let's change it up. We'll bring in a different illustrator. And then all of a sudden, as a consumer, I'm going, oh no, where's those beers gone that I love? Because they look completely ruddy different.
Yeah.
And so, like, I was talking to another podcast about it, but it's like that unintentional rebrand that they do. But what you're doing is you're isolating your consumer, because all of a sudden they've got used to something and you've whipped it out from underneath their feet. And the other side of things is the back of the can. I really think the back of the can is really under-leveraged real estate a lot of the time. Some breweries do it very, very well. But in my opinion, there is a distinct difference between someone like an illustrator and a designer. And in some cases, you need both to work in parallel very, very well. Because you can have a glorious looking illustration on the front of the can, but you turn it around to the back and it looks like someone has just thrown up on the thing with all the words that you need to include. And it's all the boring stuff, it's the regulatory stuff, and you don't fit anything in there for like the story or what you should be tasting or where it's from or any kind of extension to the artwork. Like, why have you called your beer this? Why have you put that on the front of it? That is all the good stuff that I wish people invested more time in, because it makes more of the experience.
Who are the breweries that you admire then from a design perspective then, Tim? Is there anyone that stands out to you?
From a design perspective, so like not necessarily from a full brand perspective, Celestial Beer Works in Texas.
We've interviewed them
on the channel.
Have you?
Yeah.
I really love what they're doing, because they're a bunch of creatives who pull it together, and their little touches are gorgeous. Like, they don't just wax dip, they wax dip and then put little miniature dice on it, or there's a bit of glitter, there's a bit of sparkle, there's a bit like, oh, that's nice. Like, I think that it's just that extra. Like, they know what they're playing with, and then they just add that extra 5% on it where you go, I like that. And so from a visual thing, from a tactile nature as well, feels lovely. It feels like it's the Unicorn Brewery, because it's so fluffy and delightful and rainbowy. It's just delightful.
Right, we're going to move on to another beer, but I picked this one intentionally for a couple of reasons. One, it's a great beer, and for a sessionable beer, it's absolutely banging, and I'm a real big fan of Wylam. But two, this can is printed. And I know that that's a thing now which a lot more breweries are starting to look at, probably from a cost-saving perspective, but maybe also from a recycle. Maybe it's better for the environment, maybe to do that. But on core beers, for instance, like this one, I suppose it serves breweries better to just get a shitload of cans printed, because they know it's going to be filled with that liquid. But there's just one problem with it, and I want to get your opinion on it as well. I just don't like it. Okay. I don't like the printed cans. It doesn't feel as premium as labels. And I don't know, why is that? Can you tell me why I'm feeling like that?
Is it a tactile side of things? Like, so that the difference between the coating and covering that you can get, a fully printed can, it's not completely gloss, but it has almost like a bit of a plasticky feel to it. So if you were to shut your eyes and hold that in one hand versus the likes of a label, which a lot of them are now uncoated as well, or coated to feel uncoated, is a very strange situation.
That is a great observation.
Without even looking at it in your hand, you've potentially got something which is more crafted. If you can feel the edges, you can feel the ridges, where the join is. So that might be one thing. It is, of course, subjective in terms of I like this,
Oh, yeah,
but I
yeah,
don't
absolutely,
like this.
yeah.
But from a tactile nature, that could be one thing you're picking up on.
I quite like that.
Do you like that? I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's subjective. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the tactile nature that I quite like, to be honest with you, because you can actually feel the design on it.
Yeah. I suppose we should have bought in a couple more because things like all the macro beer is all printed cans for obvious reasons. And yeah, I don't know. For me, it just kind of removes that feel of proper craft. I know that's a snobby thing to say, and perhaps not, and totally not really accurate. But
it does make a statement, doesn't it? Like if you're investing in something, then that would suggest there's a suitable volume, a suitable amount of money for you to be able to achieve that, versus running it off a line with a label. And so you making that kind of instinctive association that, oh, they're a bit too big now. I prefer someone who's doing it a little bit more. You like to imagine someone sticking the label on by hand, kind of thing.
Yeah. No, for sure. That's a really great point, actually. And
It's actually just a family, and all the kids are doing it
They're just crying as they put
by a river.
Sup, Hop Lords, I'm Chris.
And I'm Paul, and we are Planet Beer TV.
Yep, and we are a YouTube channel that make fun, irreverent, and informative craft beer content. And guess what?
We've got a Patreon!
Hooray!
So head over to the link in the description and find out how to become a member.
By doing this, you will help us make bigger content, better content, and you will also get some member exclusives along the way.
So come and join the Planet Beer TV community.
The water's warm.
Not like the beer.
one subject which is totally zeitgeist at the moment, and you'll know this, and I know this, and Paul knows this because of the industries that we work in. AI, absolutely game changer in the industry, turned the whole thing up on its head. Now, we've been very particular today about making sure that all the artwork that we've picked are actually made by people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, because one of the things which I really dislike, and I know there's perhaps a couple of breweries that I see that I can just see it from a mile off. I can see, having used it, Gen AI, I know when someone's done that and made just a can design. That for me is a hard no. But, and this is where, like, I've recently got into some hot water with some journalists, some beer journalists on Blue Sky, arguing about the merits of Gen AI, because they're saying there is absolutely no merit to it. It's all theft and should not be used.
It's a death of art.
Yeah,
we were told.
Right. I have a completely different opinion to that. I do think it needs to be regulated. I think it needs to be reined in, but I think it has plenty of good uses if you know how to use it. What are your opinions on AI?
How long have we got? No,
That was a good question. That was like proper hard-hitting Paxman, that was.
What are you going to do about it?
Blimey. Sorry, Tim.
You're going to cry for a minute, guys, and I can come back with a suitable answer. It's a blessing and a curse, and it does vary. Like, who's it a blessing for? Those smaller breweries who can't afford to pay an illustrator or a true artist to do something, but want to be able to put something on a clip, maybe for a seasonal that's out for 4 weeks, that looks acceptable. Now, like you were saying, if you're in the industry, you can spot AI artwork a mile off. And it's no longer just looking for the sixth finger. You know, there are other nuances to the artwork where you go, yeah, I reckon I know what they've done there.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of things is I've used AI. I haven't said to AI, create me a can design. I've gone, I need an element that will make part of my design. I need an asset, much like lots of designers do. And this is a really, really important difference between designers and artists, okay? Artists are illustrators, they're painters. They create from scratch a lot of the time on a canvas or on Procreate. Designers will gather elements and combine it all together to make something new and exciting. So as a designer, if I'm looking for a snake from a certain angle with a certain look in its eye, and I can't find a stock image of that. Bugger, if I'm going to London Zoo and trying to photograph them, I'm going to generate it and then bring that into the wider design to leverage it. And so that's where I see it as a blessing and a curse. In terms of
Completely agree.
regulation, I completely get it. I've got a lot of illustrator friends who feel very strongly about it, and as would I. If someone were trying to just rip off their style,
Yeah.
being able to do it, then yeah, that's dirty work, and it's murky waters.
And I think that's what's killing most of the discourse around AI, isn't it? Because that's the ultimate thought that people have about AI.
It's the new Brexit.
It's pulling it. It's just referencing existing art and it's ripping it off and it's changing it just enough that you can use it as your own. Blah blah blah. And that's not true. I mean, you mentioned there, Tim, quite rightly. If you need a particular asset, well, before AI, what would you do? You'd go to an asset library. Usually public, where many people have probably used that asset before. I mean, what's the difference? In fact, the AI would probably generate you something that's unique.
And you get these asset libraries still exist now, and now they're full of a load of AI images.
Yeah. It's the snake eating its own tail.
They can get that as well.
But yeah, I mean, I just joked there. It's the new Brexit, but I really do think it is. Like, it's such a subject that people will, to some degree, they can fall out over it. You'll get perhaps two professionals who are like, I don't want to use that guy. I don't like that guy because I know that he uses AI. It's like weightlifters who look at other ones saying they're not natural or they're enhanced or something. It does kind of feel like we're in that kind of age now where that's the way it's being treated. And I think, like you were saying there, if you can use it in the way that we use it, because we do exactly the same as you, we will use it for things that will add extra creative to what we do, but it's never the sole element of what we're doing. It's not the product, it's part of the product that we're putting out. That's what the generative AI will kind of form part of, that greater whole. And also, a lot of the time, we do a heavy, there's a lot of modification and actual, and you'll find this as well, obviously, in your designs. You get the stuff off whatever it's been generated on, but then you do a lot of like painting over it yourself and redesigning that asset that it's just given you, because it's not perfect first time, but it's a much better start than having to pay £200 for a stock photo from Alamy or whatever, and then it not being really what you wanted, but you've perhaps got to draw it by hand instead.
Yeah, and from a financial side of things, if you think about, like, say you've had a really talented illustrator create you a circular clip. Okay, so circular, it's kind of square in ratio with the edges colored. Why am I describing the shape of a circle? Everyone knows the shape of a circle. I apologize. But
it's good to have a recap.
Yeah.
I'm a bit
We're
done.
gonna
I'm
work-
glad you did, because I'd forgotten.
We're going to work on triangles next, guys, so bear with me, okay?
Damn it. My kryptonite.
Anyway, so you've got this wonderful circular clip, but all of a sudden you're going, oh, we're going to roll it out into cans. And now we need that illustration to be taller, please. And we need more space above it and on the sides. Yeah. And you've then got a choice. You can go back to the illustrator and say, would you mind expanding the canvas and drawing in, extra sky and a few more clouds for me? Or can I use AI just to generate that extra 200 pixels at the top? And you've got a choice where the illustrator goes, yeah, of course I can do it. It's, 250 quid and I'll get it back to you in a couple of days. Or smack it into Photoshop and you've done it in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. I mean, this is ultimately where I think the absolutists who are just, never use AI. Are you expecting then a brewery that would make a can, like let's say that brewery that you were talking about earlier, they can't afford to pay a designer, but should they find a designer who will work for that and probably is working under minimum wage? That isn't that more of an insult to basically be underpaying someone because you can't really afford to do it than it is to just go, it's completely out of my hands. I'm going to use Gen AI to do it. And that's what we're going to come up with. And that's what we're going to do because we've got complete control over that. I get that there'll be a grey area with it being, scraped from real artwork and real designs and stuff else. But I mean, isn't everything You know, how many times have we listened to songs that are basically just a rehash of what someone else has kind of already done before?
Mm.
You know, it's
I mean, Led Zeppelin did 4 albums. I'm a Zeppelin fan. It's fun, but it's not just that though, is it? I think as the general public get more savvy as well to the output of obvious AI, you know, the really bad stuff that you see popping up now. Ugh. It's going to be a detriment to the brewery in this instance, because there was an instance last year, and I won't mention the brewery because I think they've changed what they're doing now, but they're a fantastic brewery who have just kind of pivoted from more traditional cask stuff. They're doing some amazing stuff in the modern craft world, and they had some really good cans, very basic in branding, but you could recognise them, and they were good. And then they completely rebranded and started using some dog shit AI imagery on it to try and look more modern, I
know
guess.
exactly who you mean.
Yeah, and I won't mention because I really like them as a brewery, and it just put me right off. And it actually ended up making them look cheap.
Yeah, agreed.
And that kind of followed through into the beer, I think, a little bit. It just felt wrong. So, yeah.
We say it. We always make jokes around it, but you drink with your eyes as much as anything else, you know. It's the,
which is unusual
and painful. It's so painful. But if you extrapolate out, you know, taking AI even just beyond a clip or a can design, and look at it from a branding perspective, like the reputation of a brewery or what people trust and believe in, then that you can directly correlate to why the likes of, you know, content like in this format, long format content, video, people talking to one another is on the rise. The same for podcasts. The reason they've extended the length of a reel or of a short video is because there's more authenticity to it. It's real people. It's the it's the ahs, it's the human error. And people can make up their own minds about stuff instead of just being fed that static, which could have easily been generated and then someone plastered the brewery name on the side of a glass. Or that post that they wrote there that's so eloquently written, but written in American when you're a UK brewery. Actually, this kind of content is almost the solution or the antidote to when you're overwhelmed with a lot of static AI-generated content.
Quick curveball question. Thoughts on Beak?
Thoughts on Beak?
And their branding. Hey!
Yeah.
The two reasons for asking that. One, our last podcast was about the Portman Group and how they got involved in some of the Beak artwork because it was too apparently too obvious.
It was anthropomorphic
weather for children, which could appeal to children, I guess. So the Portman Group got involved,
and because of the primary colours of the palette, and
it was too simplistic, and they got involved and basically tried to make them change it. And that's still ongoing, I think.
No, I think they've changed it.
They've changed it, but they still got the same artwork and stuff.
Yeah, but they had to do another design for Deshed.
But they've been going down to them, haven't they? And it's an ongoing communication, I think, between them. I really like Beak.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who don't.
It's bold, it's simplistic, it's minimal, but it's consistent. Like you say, you've got such a limited color palette that you're playing with, and you're playing with basic rudimental shapes. It's so ambitious for a visual identity. I really love it. And you remember I talked about the idea of you can have an artist and a designer. They have one of each. Right? So that's the art, that's the design, that's the layout, right? And they shout out both of them, and it's got hierarchy and layout and everything that you need. So it is an absolute delight.
Yeah.
And then when I was talking about label size again as well, right? It's a shorter than normal label, which is really great. So again, the glint of the can is catching your eye. Even when you've got that whole, like, if your hand is covering the majority of the label, you're like, what are you drinking? What's that about? Like, that seems different. I posted a video about this the other day, hence I can wax so lyrically about it.
Cool.
And the other thing is there's a test called the thumb test, right? And the idea is that you can put your thumb over something which is a well-known brand and still know it belongs to that group.
Yeah.
Like, I can't use my thumb because it'd be weird, but if I covered the Beak can Anyone
Yeah.
who drinks, craft beer knows that's Beak. Yeah, you don't need to read the word Beak. So to me,
So,
that's a
great
sign of a
shout.
great brand and a well thought out brand as well.
They're probably my favourite in terms of branding, to be fair. They've just grown on me so
Really
much,
nice,
Beak. And they always stand out on the shelf.
But I just want to throw this in there as well on the Portman Group thing. So when they did the thing against Beak, saying it was too much, like it appealed to children too much, I took my 3.5-year-old daughter into the bottle shop
And got incredibly drunk.
and I asked her to pick out a can, go over to the shelf and pick out a can where I knew Beak was. Didn't even look at Beak.
Really?
It didn't stand out amongst all the other stuff that was on the shelves, and I think she ended up picking like a neon raptor because it had a dinosaur on it.
Well, that's
So it's like it just goes to show this thing about it could appeal to children because it looks like Mr. Men. It's bullshit.
You put that against a bottle of Prime or a can of Monster, or I would argue that a Beavertown can is more appealing to a younger generation than something like this, which is artistic and minimal.
Tim, where can we find you and your works?
Me and my words. Well, you can find me at my website, which is thebrandweaver.co.uk. You'll find my brewery-specific stuff at Branding for Breweries. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on TikTok. You can find the podcast that I now run called Branding for Breweries on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Music.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nice.
Yeah, and an email newsletter that goes out every Friday as well.
But mate, brilliant.
Thanks for joining us tonight, dude.
Lads,
Really enjoyed it, pal.
really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.